Hang on.
Good evening, everybody. I am hugely
Okay.
thankful
All right.
to Garland
My
Nixon for joining us this evening. Garland Nixon is a political analyst, YouTuber, and we salute his work that he has done on the deep state. And what a tumultuous week. He's joining us on the channel for the first time. Huge thank you for coming on, first of all.
Hey, thank you for inviting me.
We have seen these events slowly unfold and get crazy, as we saw with the JFK assassination, as we saw with the attempt on Ronald Reagan by Hinckley, all the strange things that came out, the Hinckley family related directly to the Bush crime family. We see so many parallels. When this went down, based on your research and your experience with the security apparatus, what came to mind? Did you suspect foul play immediately, or like many people are putting it down to incompetence?
And if you want the story, I'll tell you. I used to see John Hinckley every week at one point. But if you ever want that,
What?
let me. I can tell you. If you want to hear that real quick, I used to see Hinckley every
Yes.
week.
Just
Okay,
tell the viewers, Garland, who John Hinckley what
he's
is.
the guy that shot Ronald. He's the guy that shot Ronald Reagan, right?
Yep.
So here's what happened. They put him in this mental institution called St. Elizabeth in Washington D.C. At that time, I was working for an agency called the Maryland Natural Resources Police. In a word, what we did, a police boat. I was on a police boat, right? And they did all kinds of stuff to do with outdoors and wildlife. And mostly I did search and rescue on the Chesapeake Bay. Okay, bottom line is where I kept my police boat was Sandy Point State Park, right, very close to Washington, D.C. And so I'd go there and they would tell us, Secret Service and different people would say, look, the people from St. Elizabeth are going to come down here this weekend, and they bring them down every week to go. They'd be grilling, they'd be swimming, hanging out at the park, and John Hinckley was one of them. And so they brought the people from this mental institution down, and you literally see John Hinckley walking around the park, going swimming in swimming shorts and stuff. How
Wow.
crazy is that?
What did you make of the meal he had scheduled with Neil Bush?
Oh, I don't know about that. I don't know about the meal with Neil Bush part, but I mean, none of it shocks me. You know what I mean? But
Yeah, I
I'll say
mean,
this. I'll say this about the one thing I'll say about this. The thing that I think that you connect to them is a lot of people felt that Ronald Reagan was not, his presidency wasn't going well, that things weren't going well, that he probably wasn't going to win the second time around. There were a lot of people that argue that this getting shot and surviving it kind of makes you look like a hero, and that's what really helped him to win the second time around. You get shot, you go down, you get up, and people think, wow, that guy's tough or a hero or whatever. It gives an air of being a tough guy, being the cowboy, being the bad guy, being the strong guy. And a lot of people, interestingly enough, felt that was what helped Ronald Reagan to win the second time around.
yeah, because he jumped over 20 percentage points in popularity after the assassination attempt. So it's definitely something the public rallies behind. So when you saw what happened with Trump then, as it went down on that day, the news came out, what came to your mind based upon your experience?
Well, we have a historical context here in the United States, and the historical context is the deep state had killed. It's clear. Based on my research, I would argue this: they killed JFK, they killed RFK, they killed Martin Luther King, they killed Malcolm X. I mean, on and on and on. Anytime the deep state saw somebody that, for whatever reason, they saw as a threat, they were going to kill him. And lots more people. Fred Ham, I could go on and on and on. If they didn't like a guy, they were going to kill him. So because of that historical context, and add this, I've been going on Galloway, and Galloway and I had been talking about it plenty of times. Like, yeah, Trump better watch his back. Yeah, they're going to try to kill him. Robert Fico, he took a couple of bullets when he pushed back against the EU and NATO and the same deep state people. He didn't. And when that happened, I said, Viktor Orban better watch his back, right? So I was already of a mindset that the deep state had a bullseye on him. Of course, the day before, Joe Biden says we should put a bullseye on Donald Trump. The rhetoric was there. The historical context was there. The present context where people like Fitzo are getting shot because they push back against what is, U.S. deep state foreign policy. So because of all, I put all that together to say, at that point, I had to suspect that it was a deep state hit. All of those things come together. And soon as the guy gets shot, I can remember a guy that got shot. And when the police looked into it and did the investigation, the first thing they saw was he had been getting texts from somebody saying, I'm going to get you. You better leave my girlfriend alone or I'm going to get you. When you see those texts, you pretty much got yourself suspect, right? When you hear all of these people, there's the intelligence community has 6 ways from Sunday of getting back at you, right? When you hear people, Trump has to be eliminated, that's the kind of language they were using, right? And Trump gets shot right off the bat. You're like, you think without any knowledge whatsoever, I think the deep state's behind this. So that was my immediate first inclination.
Has it become the method of the last resort, though, to have a lone gunman these days? It's not that frequent as the incidences you cited. It seems to me now they try and destroy your reputation. In Trump's case, his reputation was enhanced. They try and criminalize you and throw you in prison. In Trump's case, his reputation was enhanced by that as well. It seems they had to go to the third strike to try and shut him up.
That's the discussion that was already had. You know what I mean? Tucker Carlson had that discussion. So it was like at that point, all these things had been talked about prior to the shooting, and it was, I reported on the whole Russiagate thing. So they went, all through his career, making up lies about Donald Trump, lying to the court about Donald Trump, and no one was held accountable, leaking false stories about. I'm not a Trump fan, but what I am a fan of justice. I think everybody deserves justice. Everybody deserves, I'm a lefty. I'm not a conservative, but I am a person who believes in justice. I don't believe in justice for people on the left or people on the right or people in the middle. Donald Trump has a right to run, and the people that want to vote for Donald Trump have a right to vote for him. And darn it, if Donald Trump wins, he should be president, right? That's what I believe in. However, apparently not everybody agrees with me. And so, it was just a situation wherein Donald Trump has recently done another. I haven't really gotten all the information from it, but apparently he did another interview. And in the interview, he was kind of saying, I don't really want war with Russia. I don't really want war with China. He doesn't want to get into something that's going to get a nuclear war and kill us all. How crazy is Donald Trump? He doesn't want a nuclear war that's going to kill everybody, right? He's like, I got issues with China, but I think we can work them out other ways than everybody getting killed, for God's sake, right? Okay. Well, there's a lot of money to be made from war. You know what I mean? There's a lot of people that are getting money on all these think tanks, all these other things, and he's costing them billions of dollars. And it's a whole lot cheaper to buy a bullet than it is to have to deal with the fact that Donald Trump's going to cut off your money. So now I say all that to say this. Look, I'm also a person of reason. And until I have some conclusive evidence, I'm going to say this. Is it possible theoretically that this kid was just a mentally ill person that decided to shoot at Trump? Theoretically, that is possible. But when you start looking at the circumstances, the history, when you start looking at the circumstances surrounding the incident, it's kind of hard to believe. Now, of course, as I said, I'm a reasonable person. Is it possible? I can't say it's not impossible. I'm just saying it's kind of hard to believe that the people who shot all the other presidents or guys who wanted to be president in usually very similar ways, that these guys are standing around, some friggin' guys laying on a roof with a gun. People are screaming, hey, there's a guy on the roof and he's got a gun. And they're like, nothing to see here. Let's just go back over and finish our coffee until after he gets his shots off. At some point, you got to be a little suspicious. I'm just saying.
Yeah, so we've got a question from Minnie Whipster, and I'll give my interpretation in terms of the logistics of this, how I think it goes down, and I'll hand it over to you. If the deep state tried to take him out, why did they use a 20-year-old? My interpretation is if you are constantly putting it out there that he's evil personified. He's going to destroy America. It's the end of the world unless he's taken out. He's a target. Someone is going to be inspired, ISIS style, to step up to the plate. And if on that very day they do so, security stands down. We've all seen the videos of the sniper and the marksman, and they're facing off, and nothing is happening. And my understanding is that guy had free reign to take him out. So is it the case that they just make security lax and let these things happen?
That's certainly a possibility too. And I think that has to be part of the discussion. I'm glad you brought that up. Because let's just say, again, I like to entertain every possibility, right? Let's just say, for the sake of argument, that this kid was not directed by the deep state. Okay. They've used patsies before in one way or another, right? They've used, somebody to work through for one reason or the other. And as we've discussed, you got a bunch of people standing around saying he should be shot. He's a traitor to our country. He's going to destroy our democracy. So you set up an environment where some mentally ill person maybe is likely to do that. 9/11, there are a lot of people that believe that maybe the government either did it, or they knew it was going on and maybe they facilitated it. Maybe they turned their head a little bit. Maybe they didn't see anything that was going on. You know what I mean? There are a number of ways that you can facilitate an act. You don't have to buy the gun and put it in somebody's hand. If you facilitate it, if I commit a murder and I facilitate the murder, I am in fact a conspirator or an accomplice to the murder, and I can be, charged. I can go to jail for that, right? So there are numerous, and these people, talk about the intelligence community. They're not idiots, right? They're very smart. So could they have used this kid as a patsy? Possibly. Could they have facilitated it and set the table where it's real easy? Could they have, and let me add this, could they have been monitoring him and kind of got an idea, hey, I think he wants to move on Trump, and set the table, get out of the way, make it happen? How do you wander around a pre-presidential rally with a long guy? How do you get up there and nobody sees you? And then when you get up there, now we're understanding like an hour beforehand that the police had like a picture of him they were circulating, that the parents had called the police. Hey, I don't know where my son is. You know what I mean? There's just so many things that you have to say. They're very sharp at plausible deniability. They're very, very smart. These people know ways to set it up where you can't pin the finger on them. And sometimes you can facilitate an incident without having all your fingerprints all over it and get the outcome. So what it comes down to is this. Still, I think most reasonable people, other than like the crazy, cultish Democrats who just like, how they're standing around going, oh, too bad he missed, but other than those people, conservatives or independents like me, who are not a member, and a lot of people I know on the left, are like, yeah, kind of look suspicious. You have to look at that and you have to suspect that they had a hand in it. And let me add one other thing. And I will bet you this. I bet you Donald Trump suspects that they had a hand in it. And I bet it will affect the way that he does things. And I bet you if I'm RFK Jr. and they say to me, hey, we're going to give you some Secret Service protection, I'd be like, yeah, no, thanks. I'll be good. I'll figure a way out. It's kind of like suicide. You're going to let the fox in the hen house if you're asking for Secret Service protection.
Yeah, you've raised a number of interesting points there. So with Hinckley, before the attempted assassination on Reagan, he was arrested crossing state lines with guns, heading to somewhere someone was giving a speech, and he was only detained for a matter of hours. It's almost as if he was in play to do these things, and he was allowed to roam with his own free will. So you've mentioned about Trump and his security. Why on earth would you surround yourself with bodyguards from the US federal government three-letter agencies that were the same ones as you just rightly identified, Russiagate, etc.? Why wouldn't you have some good old boy, ex-Marine guys you've known for a long time doing your personal security? Do you think now that after that bullet just whizzed past his head and grazed his ear, do you think now that he is completely determined not to, as previously when he came into power and he surrounded himself, he said he was going to clean the swamp, but he surrounded himself with swamp creatures. Do you think now he will be more than ever determined to get the people that are embedded by the deep state, from the Clinton crime family, from the Bush crime family, that have been embedded in the CIA, for example, for decades?
Yeah, I think that one of the thing, and I mean, let's be honest, I think there was a certain amount of naivety to Donald Trump. You know what I mean? I think he, like many people, sadly in America, felt like, oh no, our government, they'd never do anything like that. That was the past, and I don't think they'd try to take me out. Would they go far? Would they do all the Russiagate? I think he felt they've done all that they're going to do. They tried to charge him with everything but friggin' mopery on the high seas. So I figured at this point, he figured they've charged me with every charge. They've done everything. I think I'm okay. I don't think, and I understand how a person could think that nah, they won't go that far. I do think that he's a brand new Donald Trump now. I do think he's a different Donald Trump. And I do think if you look back, I think he's got to look back and say, I was on a phone call in the Oval Office, and there were Judases all around me, and they went back and they reported to Adam Schiff and company what I said on the phone call, and the CIA guy was in that, and then next thing you know, impeachment after impeachment is coming. So I think that Donald Trump, what that probably did is, shall we say, radicalize Donald Trump, and I don't mean that in a negative way, because I'll say this, having dealt with and observe the kind of things that go on with our government, I would consider myself a radicalized person. I put it to you like this: if you understand the nature of the United States government, if you ain't radical, something's wrong with you. If you think that you're just going to go along to get along in this country, and that you can just support the regular old politicians and it's going to work out for you, that you can not push back, you know what I mean? Then you're naive. You're either radical, and radical's not a negative thing. If you're in an unjust environment, right, then to go along with that is wrong. To just be a person that goes along to get along in an unjust, you should be radical to push back against wrong, So the bottom line is, I think Donald Trump has been radicalized in a way that he understands the nature of the beast that he's dealing with, and he understands. I think all this is, I'm guessing, subjective, but I think that Donald Trump will now understand that he's got to be very, very wary of who he puts around him, that he's got to watch his back, and that he's going to have to put people around him that he feels will. But one of the things I'll say is this: if he's smart, he'll pick people around that he's had around for a long time. You know what I mean? That's the history of, you bring people that you came to the dance with in a long time. If he's smart, they're less likely to help rub you out. Not saying that they won't. I'm just saying all you can do is play the odds. So I think you're going to see Donald Trump surround himself with people that he's been around with a long time, that he trusts, and go from there. Yeah, I think
All
he's a
right, I'm going to
different
get
man.
to that. I'm going to get to that in a second. We're here with Garland Nixon. We've got almost 1,000 watching live across all of the platforms right now. If you are watching on YouTube, Garland's YouTube channel link is in the description box below the video, as is the links to all of his other links. So please support his important work. If, like you just said, Trump's eyes are now wide open to the maneuvers of the deep state, doesn't that make him an even bigger target? Won't they be coming to finish the job? Is it like the mafia scene where they try to whack the guy and he's in the hospital on life support and they go in and they finish the job?
Yeah, they put the old pillow over his head when he's when they unplug his machines. You know the game. Well, I think I do believe that Trump understands that. However, let me add this: it's going to be a lot harder now too. You know what I mean? Now that they shot and missed, I mean, if we are, as so many people suspect, it was a deep state act, it's going to be a whole lot harder because, the cat's out of the bag. And so, they could risk destabilizing everything at that point. They could really risk losing it all. So I think now they're going to be wary of that. Look, and I got to throw this out there too. Some years ago it came out, and people can look it up on whatchamacallit, that the CIA, that intelligence has a heart attack gun. There have been people that have died of diseases, terrible, come down suddenly with cancer and things of that nature, where there was suspicion that, they had said. So the other side of it is, who knows, that somebody could suddenly get sick with an, unforeseen illness. They do those kinds of things. So Donald Trump's got to watch himself. I've watched what I eat. If I look like the king in the old days, right? He might need to get a food taster or something like that. But yeah, I'm with you. It's a dangerous environment for Donald Trump. It is definitely a dangerous environment for Donald Trump. But it's tough for them to make a move on him the second time.
Just look at all the methods they tried to use on Castro.
Exactly.
All right, we've got a question here from Christine Peach. So many TV people saying that Trump needs to be taken out. Is anyone calling for justice about the hate speech about Trump? Before I give that to you, Garland, I watched the videos yesterday of Biden just last week talking about Trump being a target and all this aggressive speech. And then after the assassination attempt, he's saying people need to lower and not be so aggressive, saying these things. Absolute bloody hypocrites. Do you think a lot of these people are responsible for what happened?
Yes. Yeah. There's, what's interesting about this? A year or so ago, 8 months or so, AOC was running around talking, and she came up with a new term, right? I'm sure she didn't come up with it. They came up, the spin masters came up with it. And the term was stochastic terrorism, right? And I'm like, what the hell are they talking about? Stochastic. And they're like, basically what they were saying is, and they were like saying, who was it? Tucker Carlson, whoever the hell, right? And they're like, yes, they're saying things that are inciting people to violence. So stochastic terrorism is if you say something that incites people to violence. I don't think we're going to hear that term anymore from them, because they didn't. If you think about it, Kathy Griffin's running around with a severed head. Severed head. It's Trump. Oh, that was ketchup. And afterwards, she's like, well, that was ketchup on it. I don't care what was on it. You assassinated him in effigy. They talked about, you had people come on television and say somebody's going to have to put a bullet in Trump. Now, why is it that we're on YouTube, or I'm on Rumble, all those, whatever, right? And I got to watch it, because if I say the wrong word, I'll get a strike. YouTube will demonetize me, anything like that. But they can go in the mainstream media and say you should put a bullet in the president. Oh, it wouldn't be the first time an actor had killed the president. They can say all these unthinkable, violent things that would get you and I, which they're just waiting to throw us off, whatever the hell anyway, that you and I, if we say anything close to that, they're going to interpret it as violence. We can say, I've had instances where I've said things like, yes, I don't think they should kill anyone. Oh, he used the word kill. We're going to have to, I could say the opposite. We're going to have to demonetize that video. But yes, they've been on saying all of this. They've created an environment that was very dangerous for Donald Trump. So if the deep state wasn't behind it, if in fact it was just a crazy killer that they did or didn't facilitate, they're just as guilty. They are just as guilty, because the thing that they've said has created an environment of violence, of anger, and of irrationality for some of their followers, supporters, whatever the case may be.
Yeah, I know what you mean regarding the algorithmic strangulation. About 3 years ago, I lost my YouTube channel twice over my Epstein coverage. We had 60 million views on that case, and it was all nuked and wiped off the face of the earth. Anyway, comment here from Torwind. Have you guys seen the woman in the black hat behind Trump who was hiding herself behind a sign to get her phone out to start recording? Seconds before the shots rang out, she didn't even flinch. I have seen that. Have you seen that? Have you noticed any other anomalies in the crowd?
No,
Garland?
but I'll put it like this. If you look through the crowd of thousands, you can pick up all kind of anomalies. I mean, I don't say that there wasn't a big deal behind that, but there were people that were picking up oh boy, Trump's getting ready. Oh, he's going to say something. So while those things could indicate something bad, by the same token, as who was it? Freud said, sometimes a cigar is just a cigar. So could it be that she knew something? She was recording something? Possible. But it could be that with that many people, you got thousands of people there. There are people that are like, oh, did you get that? No, I'll record it. Yeah, there's things going on that are organic. So I don't want to say go all through everything and say that proves a point or that doesn't prove a point. I don't know.
Next question is from Baby Gerald. Has anyone figured out where the dead victim and wounded people were seated or standing?
That's a good question. I don't know, because what's interesting is Trump's there and bullets are flying by him. And at first I thought, well, somebody behind him would get hit. Like the bullets would be coming at him like that, and you'd see somebody behind him and fall. But the thing about it was, while I saw Trump, I don't know what angle the bullets were coming on. So I don't know. I haven't seen in any video anybody get hit, and the likelihood is they won't show some poor innocent person getting hit. But I don't know. Remember, the guy's a long way away, and he's shooting at an angle, so we don't know what angle it was going. But I haven't seen that enough that I could really comment on it, comfortably to say, oh, this is what I think.
So here's a comment I concur with, and I'll get your thoughts. That kid being a Republican literally means less than nothing. The CIA could make him a Martian if they wanted to. They wiped all his social media and could create any identity they want.
And not only that, here's the other thing. It does literally mean nothing for this reason. One of the machinations that's been used in the primaries is this. Okay, let's say you want Trump to win or Trump to lose. One of the things the Democrats won't tell you is in 2016, they wanted Trump to win because they thought they could beat him. And they were like pushing their people to help him win. There was for anybody who doesn't know, look something up. It's called the Pied Piper theory. It was Hillary Clinton's plan to say, let's get Donald Trump to win because he's the easiest to beat. That's literally what they did. Anybody can search that. It's out there. The evidence is there. They said it, right? But here's my point. There were a lot of people who were Democrats who would register as Republicans, so that during the primary, they could vote in the Republican primary, and they could one way or another disrupt or affect the Republican primary. So the fact that he was a Republican means absolutely nothing, because he could have been either or for whatever reason. I did read about apparently one of his students, one of his a student that was in school with him, saying they had talked, and the guy said, it was a Hispanic kid, and the kid said, I'm voting for Trump, and apparently he got mad at him and called him stupid, that this happened in the past. I don't think that he was a pro-Trump guy by any stretch of the imagination. I think that he was a Trump-hating kid, and I think he was probably mentally ill. One of the other kids that went to school with him, I saw that interview, said, yeah, he was kind of bullied. He was a little, which doesn't mean anything. It could be he was mentally ill, and yeah, that happened. It could be that that's the kind of person you use. You know what I mean? If you go on some plausible deniability, you use a person who's like that to carry out your diabolical deeds. And that way people just say, well, he was mentally ill, rather than, if I'm the deep state and I want to use somebody, I'm not going to use somebody who has like that people can look at their history and look at all that stuff. Use a mentally ill kid, stick him out there, and then you can paint whatever picture you want.
What is the security protocol for an event like this? All the surrounding buildings, aren't they scoped out? And how did the shooter know the building that didn't have any sniper on the top of the roof?
Those things make no sense. Keep in mind, I was in law enforcement, right? I worked with Secret Service. Dick Cheney had a house over in the Eastern Shore of Maryland, right? In this one community that was on the water, and he'd come there on the weekends. And at that time, I was for the Maryland Natural Resources. We were the guys with the police boats, right? Okay. I was the assistant commander of field operations at that time. I was assigned to work with the Secret Service to set up the security plan for Dick Cheney's house when he came there on the weekends. I know how they work. I worked with them, right? I worked with the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force. This was, way back when, but, because I worked for the agency, and they thought there may be areas around Maryland where there could be terrorism, like nuclear power plants, that kind. So I did that kind of stuff, right? I worked for the governor's office. I work with these people. They send people in weeks ahead of time. They're taking satellite photos. They got drones flying around over every square inch of everything. It's not plausible to argue that they hadn't gone through I'll tell you what we did. We would literally do this. You go, if that place, whatever it was, if they have a website, right? You go to their website and you go through their website and you say, is there something on the website that anybody could use to get information or whatever, right? If you go and the website says we have 4 buildings and they're located here and the size is this and the heights of the building is this, you say take that off the website because somebody could utilize that for information. That's how detailed the Secret Service is. That's how, and I've worked with that. I did just so to argue that they hadn't looked at this, they hadn't scoped it out, they didn't know. They knew the height of that building, they knew the size of that building, everything you could think about of that building. There's no possible way. So it's not plausible that by happenstance he just happened to climb up to an empty building and nobody knew he was there. Especially when the cops like took a picture of him an hour before. And how do you wander up to this building with a gun and nobody sees you? A long rifle.
It's
These things
preposterous.
don't make a lot of sense, do they?
No, Bobby Taylor's wondering whether the report about the SS director dismissing Trump's regular SS and giving him novices for the 13th. Have you heard anything about that?
No, I haven't heard anything about this, but I would say this for the sake of argument. If in fact it was some kind of a deep state operation, they'd do the opposite, wouldn't they? They'd want their people in there. They wouldn't want any young people that didn't know what time it was, that didn't know what to move or how to move, right? So realistically, if they were in an operation, they wouldn't want some greenhorn in there that might run his mouth or do the wrong thing. They'd want the best that they had in there so they would know exactly what to do and when to do it. Not saying, I'm not going after the individual Secret Service agents saying everyone was in on it. I'm just saying it would make more sense to me that they would have experienced people there if the case were that they were in on it. Not saying they were or weren't. I don't want anybody to take that I'm acting like I know something that I don't know.
Yep. So this comment from All Truman Service, Trump saying he doesn't want any war. That's what got JFK in trouble. Do you think the military-industrial complex is the biggest prime mover in the deep state? And do you think that is a main issue here for Trump?
Well, I don't see it as the biggest prime mover in the deep state. You know what I mean? I mean, it's kind of like when you look at this monster, it's kind of like a person. I got arms, I got legs, I got feet. All of those things come together to make up what's Garland. Could you say he's got big feet or big hands? Yeah, but feet and hands and all of these things together come together to make Garland, right? So I don't say one of these things is more important than the other. They all work together to do the evil things that they do. I do believe that Donald Trump's failure to go along with this whole U.S. empire thing. We're supposed to run around the world, dominate everybody, tell everybody what to do. Everybody has to listen to us. But we don't have a dime for the people at home. We don't have anything to help the working person at home who's trying to make a living, trying to feed his family. We can't fix the roads. We can't fix the bridges. We can't do anything here for American people. They can suck every dime we have out of the national treasury and hand it out to their corporate friends. They can go to Ukraine and build 46 bio research labs. Bio research labs, right? How many hundreds of millions of dollars did that? And Hunter Biden was involved in that. You know, there was all kind of money laundering going on. So there's so much money laundering going on. There's money going in every which way. So there's no one part of this thing that, you know, I remember, let me say this. I remember a while back when $18 billion went to Ukraine. And I actually went in online and I found like where you could see where the money was going. You wouldn't believe it. Some of it was going to the CDC. It was going to all kinds of agencies that had nothing to do with foreign policy. You know what it was? They'll be like, yes, we're sending $40 billion to Ukraine and $20 billion to Taiwan and $10 billion to Israel. And when you start looking at that money, it's going all over to the place, to their buddies. It's going to the Center for Diseases Control. And they had things like it's going to the State Department for their international diversity program. You know what I mean? Crap like that, right? It's money laundering. They're laundering the money everywhere and everybody's getting a piece of it. So yeah, military industrial complex, they get the big chunk, but everybody else is eating off of it.
So Metal Mayhem, we only have to look at Julian Assange to see how the deep state works. Why do you think Biden gave Assange a pass?
To me, that's an easy one. And because I had talked about it for a while. One of the things that I had been saying on my radio shows in here is this. I said, if I was Assange, at that time it was kind of obvious they were just leaving him to die in a British prison, right, forever, and they were just going to have uh, um, uh, um, hearing after hearing after hearing until he died of old age or whatever. Okay. But I started saying if I was Assange, I'd say, you know what? I'm waiving my rights. I want to go to the US because they had problems. One of the big problems that they had was they spied on his defense team, which means he can't get a fair trial. I know the government didn't want to see that go to the Supreme Court. Then they had a problem because the hearings started to say, does he get to bring up his First Amendment rights? Is he going to get to make that claim? What started coming out was something that a lot of people like me had argued. If he gets over here, some of the arguments that he has, if they get in front of the Supreme Court, it's going to be hard for the Supreme Court not to find on his behalf and throw this stuff out. I think they were afraid because they started realizing that what the things that they had done had created an environment where he couldn't get a fair trial, and that if he got in front of the Supreme Court, he had about 3 or 4 things that was going to be hard for the Supreme Court not to rule in his favor. And imagine that they get him over here and then they lose and he walks. And I think they just like went to the people and said, and you know the game, I've been involved in it before. They go to him and they say, look, okay, you know you're going to walk. I know you're going to walk. But here's what we're going to do. We can drag this thing out for another 2 years, and you're already a sick, and God only knows, if you're even going to make it. Or you can just plead guilty to one thing and you can walk now. And I don't blame them. I mean, if you're looking at a couple more years and they kept you in jail for I don't know how long, and they give you an opportunity to walk, you got to, he's got a wife and kids. He had to take that. But I think they knew that they were holding a losing hand. That's why there's no other reason they would have let him go other than they were holding a losing hand.
Yeah, we've campaigned for the release of Julian Assange for years. I've corresponded with him, and thank goodness he's a free man now. All right, so just because he's saying people saw the guy on the roof and the police did not intervene, why did the state police not intervene? There is a video of this.
I don't know. I think those things need to be investigated. I don't know. It's really weird. I tell you what, when I was in law enforcement and when the president came around and we were a bunch of cops, they'd take our guns. Literally. I couldn't bring my gun in the area where the president was. They were afraid that one of us may freak out and shoot him. You know what I mean? So, unless you were assigned, if you're assigned as one of the officers and you're one of the, security personnel on scene, sure. But they are so careful. It's just unfathomable to look at the things that happened. And you know what? If there's one thing, okay, fine. But numerous things happen that make you ask questions like the question that the last person asked, and you don't have an answer to any of them. I would think some of them you would have an answer. So far, every day we're like, we turn on the news or go online and we find something new that's even more weirder. You know what I mean? It's not like, okay, we get one of our questions resolved. We have a new question that's even crazier than the ones we had before.
So we've got 20 minutes left with Garland Nixon. Please put your questions in the chat. We are live and get them in. Last shout. So we've got one here from Towind. I saw a picture of an FBI agent on the roof with a hose spraying off the blood and brain matter and drenching the ladder. When was the last time you saw a cop clean up a crime scene? Weird.
That's interesting because for the most part, again, when I was in law enforcement, I was the chief of the investigations division at one point. And, crime scene preservation is something that I taught. And no, you just don't walk in there with a hose. You know what I mean? I would think if I'm in charge of that, man, I'm going to have forensics all over there. You know what I mean? You got to have forensics all over that roof, searching. Did he leave something on the roof? What happens if you find some blood on the roof somewhere and you dab it and it ain't his? And somebody else was up there with him, and some hair on the roof, and you DNA that, and it ain't his. And you're like, whose hair is this? Somebody else was up there. You find a footprint up there. You find something else up there, and you're like, wow, this is kind of weird. So there's so many, that roof and that crime scene. I would think under these circumstances, you're going to have a forensics team in there, and they're going to go over that thing, with an electron microscope. If I'm in charge of the scene, that's what I do. You're going to tell me that The FBI sent some freaking guy up there with a water hose to hose down the crime scene. Doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. It goes against everything I was ever taught and everything that I taught as an investor. I was, again, I hate to, it's not bragging. I'm just telling people my background. I was a commander of the training division. I taught this crap. And that is a good question. It makes no sense.
Do you think they've learned from Hinckley, Saran, Oswald, that the patsy has to be eliminated immediately these days, not to let the patsy live?
Yeah, that's dead men tell no tales, right? So there's no way that guy could live, because who knows what he might say, so he had to go. And the interesting thing was, apparently they had the scope on him, but they waited until after he shot to take a shot at him. You know what I mean? So yeah, he had to die, but he had to squeeze those shots off before he died, apparently.
Aren't they trained their entire lives, these SS people, to identify and eliminate a threat on sight?
Yes, they are. And not only that, look, they don't take no chances. When you work, they'll tell you, look, you better do everything we tell you to do when you're in this area. Because if you do, those guys up there, they're not to differentiate. If you're acting weird, they have been trained, shoot first and ask questions later. So if you've got a VIP in the area, president, secretary of state or something in the area, and they will tell you. I did this for Clinton. I was involved with security for Clinton, for Bush, because I'm an older guy back in the 80s, stuff like that, right? And they'll let you know plain and clear, man, look, if you make a mistake and if you do something we've told you not to do, if you go in an area we've told you not to go in, you're likely to get shot. So the way of doing things is shoot first, ask questions later. So they see a guy laying there with a gun and they see him through the scope and they're like, asking, should I take a shot? Nah, let's wait and see what happens. Let's see how this thing shakes out before we make that decision. Who said
that? Candace is wondering whether RFK is laying low now because he knows the risk.
I tend to think this, because I think that RFK already knew the risk. There's a lot of people asking, as far as RFK's position on Israel and some things, people questioning, why is he taking this or that position? I think RFK Jr., look, RFK already knows. He has a historical context through which he can look at the lens, right? I think RFK Jr. already knows that if you go afoul of the deep state, that your life is in great danger. So yeah, I think RFK Jr. is already well aware of the risks that he is taking and that Trump is taking. And I think he's been kind of quiet, about this, because he knows, everybody knows what is possible here. Not saying that we know for sure, but we know that there's a possibility. One might even use the word a likelihood that nefarious intent was involved in this particular incident.
So we got two comments here that pertain to the lead up to this. We got from Rupert Fellows. Didn't Matthew Crooks walk to the scene, drive the white van, or drive the Hyundai? The story isn't clear. And then we've got from Hardrada. The guy was walking around using a rangefinder for F's sake. How did they not pick him up then and there?
Which leads you to believe that they did. When I say pick him up, they did. They must have I'll put it like this. How do we know that some guy was walking around with a rangefinder? Because somebody saw him. You know what I mean? We know it because somebody apparently saw. But think about this. Even if they told him, look, if you're standing there and you go, hey, there's a guy on the roof crawling around with a gun, and they don't do nothing. Well, hell, they sure ain't going to do nothing if you say, hey, there's a guy with a rangefinder. Rangefinder ain't going to bother him. Apparently, a high-powered rifle doesn't even bother him. Crawling around on the roof as Trump's talking. So apparently these people didn't, they were deaf, dumb, and blind. They couldn't see anything. Rangefinders, guns. You could have been standing there with a friggin' bazooka and a nuclear weapon, hypersonic missile aimed at the stage, and they probably wouldn't have saw that either. I think what they had was, it was a DEI thing. They had all blind officers there. They were all blind, deaf, dumb, and blind for that particular period of time, that's for sure. In the same way that Epstein's cameras mysteriously went blind for 2 hours when he choked himself out, when he hung himself.
And God,
they always go blind. Why is it the cameras go off? The guys can't see anything. People can't hear when one of these incidents happened.
And God simultaneously fell asleep which
Okay.
had never happened in the history of that jail since its inception in the 70s. So Martha's pushing back here. They mentioned they did not intervene. It could have been a child or a fan. They needed to confirm a threat.
Yeah, it could have been a child on the roof with a military assault rifle. No, I put it like this. Take a scope. You can see what's there. They had high powered scopes, man, and you saw them looking through the scope, right? And they had all the technology they needed to be able to see long distances. They had spotters. So I don't think they were considering that it was a kid crawling around there with a teddy bear. I think they kind of had a pretty good idea. Not to mention this, even if they couldn't see it, there was guys on the ground screaming, "Hey, there's a guy on the roof with a gun." They had humans, right? They had human intelligence. They had people on site standing there screaming, "There's a guy on the roof with a gun." I think that I don't know, I think that's usually probably good enough for me. If some guys, not just one, for like minutes, a whole bunch of people screaming, "There's a guy on the roof with a gun." At that point, you got to probably kind of, push back against any arguments that they were acting out of ignorance.
Yeah, for almost 3 minutes, I believe. So Brandon is wondering what was the reason that Reagan's attempted assassin, Hinckley, was released?
Oh, I got a good answer for that. It was a message for future assassins, right? The message for future assassins was, look, you do what you're told, you work with us, and you're not going to get life in prison. Sooner or later, you're going to get out of there. And he was open. Think about this. Think about this. You get arrested for some random thing. You know what I mean? Some guy gets caught with $100 worth of cocaine or something. He's going to friggin' jail. But you can shoot the president, and he went to St. Elizabeth's, and he was at Sandy Point State Park every weekend, swimming and bathing. So if you think about it, even when he was in jail, what prison can you go to that you're going to go to the park every weekend? There was babes at the park. So here you're at the park. There's girls running around in bikinis. There's grilling. There's beer. There's all these fun things going on. They took care of Hinckley. They looked out for Hinckley. You know what I mean? He didn't go to jail. He wasn't under threat. He wasn't afraid that some gang member was going to shank him. He was living a pretty good life. So I think the message to people in the future is, you do what you're told, and it ain't going to be all that bad for you. Unless we have to kill you to keep your mouth shut.
Question from Disco 1000. Will any Secret Service lose their jobs over this?
Well, if they do, here's what you can get. I can bet you. They'll be flunkies. They'll be the lowest possible ranking person who was innocent and didn't know a thing. You know how the game is. If some poor schlump that just started last week, that just came out of the academy, that was wandering around, doesn't know what's going on, will be the sacrificial lamb. Some poor slob that doesn't know anything, that's just trying to eat, that just got a job, you know what I mean? They'll say to that guy, the lowest ranking person, no authority, no knowledge, wasn't even there. They'll probably find some guy that was back at the communication center. That's who they'll fire. Guarantee it. Whoever gets fired is an innocent person who wasn't involved in anything. The people who might have done dirt, the people who might have not done their jobs, hell, they'll get a raise.
Question just came in about the motivation of the patsy. Are they brainwashed into these suicide missions? And do you think that they are, when they are brainwashed, they are offered some kind of protection and reassurance that nothing bad will happen to them?
No, I think a lot of times they got mentally ill people. They got people that are drugged. They got ways. They've been doing this for a lot of years. They know how to profile people. You know what I mean? You've got people out here that can be profiled, that can be talked into doing things, really weak-minded, mentally ill people that can be, easily dragged into doing things, dragged into, like somebody that would we had this cult a few years ago called Heaven's Gate, where all of these people drank some friggin' Kool-Aid and killed themselves. They can find people like that who are mentally weak, who are mentally pliable, that they can take advantage of. They're terrible victims. The truth is, these are people that need help. These are people usually that are pretty much victimized by the system.
Question from Brandon Hallam. Is Trump the first president since JFK to speak out against the deep state?
That I can remember. Yeah. Well, RFK Jr. tried to, but he never got to be president. And remember, people forget Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King, they didn't do him in. And, he was doing all of the civil rights stuff. That didn't bother him. They're like, yeah, whatever, right? But once Martin Luther King started saying, this Vietnam War, he started saying all the money that's going over there could be here to help the poor people. Hey, why is our government doing all of these terrible things around the world and blowing people up and killing them and spending all this money elsewhere? And actually, one of these guys, he was a member of the Black Panthers, told Martin Luther King, he said, man, long as you're walking around saying, let my people go, you're fine. He says, when you start telling the man that his war machine is a problem, you're going to have a problem. And that was it. He crossed the line. You're not allowed to say that, man. That's where all the money's, that's how they're making their money.
Question from Matless X. Did he buy a 5-foot ladder or a 12-foot ladder at Home Depot? And how did he get it in a Hyundai Sonata?
There are a couple of things I'm not sure of. It appears now, again, we're still shaking this stuff out. It does appear that maybe, I'm not 100% sure. Like I said, we're still working on it. There might have been a ladder affixed to this building. Now, I have seen buildings, and I don't know if you have too, that have like a fire escape kind of ladder on the side built in that you can climb. So at this point, I have heard that he purchased a ladder that day. But I don't know enough of the details on the ladder. But again, let's just say he did. You're wandering around with a long gun in one hand and a ladder in the other hand, and nobody can quite figure out, you're at what's the former president is about to speak, and some guy comes wandering around, walking by with a ladder and a long gun, and nobody thinks that's suspicious, and somehow you get past the Secret Service. So I don't know. I'm just saying, if the guy did in fact come there with a ladder, or you walk over and you see a ladder leaning against the building, you got to say to yourself, let's get some people over here. And you also got to get on the radio and say, hey, don't bring the VIP out on the stage until we've cleared this area. See, that's the other part. As soon as you get something suspicious, right? What are they trained? Get the guy out of the area. As soon as there's the slightest little suspicion, stop the speech, get him off stage. You get the VIP out of danger until you have cleared the area. For some reason, just somebody screaming that there's a guy on the roof with a gun wasn't enough to alert them the possibility of danger. Obviously, you and I are the ones that are screwed up. Apparently, they're on the job.
From Sparky, shooter was CIA, MK Ultra, and FBI stooge, or both. Interagency cooperation isn't always a good thing, is it?
No, absolutely not. And it's a bad thing. And that's one of the things that they're doing. They're bringing all of these together. If you think about it, when they went after Trump, right, over in, it started Operation, Crossfire Hurricane. It started in London. And they used some guy who since disappeared named Joseph Mifsud, who since disappeared, who was involved with Italian intelligence. They used Alexander Downer, who was Australian intelligence, right? So in the same way that they use these Five Eyes and these multiple intelligence agencies so they can hide what they're doing and make it harder. Like, for instance, if the House of Representatives wanted to start questioning people in the CIA about going after Trump, they couldn't very well call in people from MI6 or Italian, or you know what I mean, or so they know how to spread this stuff out. Let's not forget the CIA, FBI, all of them worked together to go after Trump for 4 years with the whole Russiagate thing. So yeah, they work together when they want to do their evil deeds. They do work together, and no, it's not a good thing. It's never a good thing because none of them are the good guys. Understand, they're not the good guys. I worked with FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force, and here's what I'm going to tell you. Anybody who tells you those guys are stupid, that they're incompetent, that they're ignorant, doesn't know what the hell they're talking about. Look, you got to have a minimum of a master's degree to be in the FBI. Everybody there is well educated. A lot of these guys, PhDs, they send them to the finest training in the world. And then something like this happens and people are like, oh, yes, they're just stupid, ignorant guys. They don't know what they're doing. They know what the hell they're doing. They really know what they're doing. They're really good. It's implausible to argue that they're stupid or ignorant or incompetent. But you ever notice they love to do that? They love to investigate themselves and say, well, our guys were just incompetent. They made in errors. The finest trained, most best equipped people in the world. And soon as they do some evil deed, they try to plead ignorance and stupidity.
All right, so some people are saying that the building had a ladder, but how on earth do you get a bloody rifle in? It's like, here's a comment from Sparky. Heard an interview with the Butler police chief. He said that the Secret Service never even met with them, much less integrate them into the event security. They were there to handle traffic.
Yeah, here's the thing about it. If I'm involved in some nefarious activity, the fewer people that know, the better. You know what I mean? I mean, if you got something going on, you don't want a whole lot of people to really know, be involved and to know what's happening. And that people start asking questions and somebody says, I was told this, oh, they told me not to go here. You just keep everybody, you guys just stay out on the periphery and keep your mouth shut. We'll tell you what to do. If you hear some gunshots, it's probably fireworks. Yeah, 4th of July. Ignore it. If you see some guy come wandering by with a ladder and a high-powered rifle, just ignore that. It happens all the time. He's one of the vendor. He's selling snowballs, probably.
We have got 5 minutes left with Garland Nixon. Get your questions in now, folks, and subscribe to his channel. There's tons of videos over there. Link is in the description box below this video if you're watching it on my YouTube. All right, so Tom Buck, anybody else think it felt like a ritualistic, sermonic atmosphere which was not to be disturbed as like a test of Trump's worthiness with a cult angle?
No, I don't. I mean, just be honest with you, I don't. I see it as someone wanted Trump dead. And how we can figure out who we're having this discussion as to the suspects, but I think it was a lot clearer than a skull and bones ritual. I don't think JFK was a skull and bones ritual. I don't think RFK. I don't think any of them were skull and bones rituals. It was a bunch of guys that said, "We're gonna put a bullet in this guy, and this is how we're going to do it, and we need plausible deniability."
Do you think there is an occult angle to the deep state, to the higher ups?
I don't know. It's quite possible. I mean, let's not forget Nazi Germany was a lot into the occult stuff. And then why do we keep seeing these people that were always belong to like Skull and Bones and some weird ass, group where you've got to tell them all your sexual secrets or something like that before you join so they can hold it over your head? There's some weird crap. Guess what I saw a few months ago? I saw Epstein Island with my own eyes.
What?
I was just vacationing in the whatchamacallit islands in St. John's. St. John's, you got St. Thomas, St. John's, right? Okay. And I caught a boat over from St. Thomas to St. John's. And I had, people are riding me around the island. I had a driver to drive me around the island, and he's pointing at, and he goes, "Oh yeah, see that right there? Here's what's interesting." He said, "Now that island right there is the British Virgin Islands, and this is the U.S. Virgin Islands. So you get over there, you got to be a passport." He's like, "See that island right there?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "That's Epstein Island." I'm like, "Really?" He says, "Not anymore because somebody else bought it." And I thought, isn't that interesting? It's right there. You got the British Virgin Islands, you got the U.S. Virgin Islands, and there sits there where you can transport people from either one. You know what I mean? MI6, CIA. I'm like, so, you know what I mean? You look there, and here's Epstein Island, and here's Virgin Islands here. I mean, not quite swimming distance, but not far from it. You could probably row between the two. Literally, it wouldn't be easy. A small motor on a boat, and you could putt back and forth between the U.S. Virgin Islands, the British Virgin Islands, and Epstein Island. So MI6, CIA can do their dirt, transport their young kids, whatever kind of horrific things they're doing back and forth, and their various celebrities and politicians. So, there's always a lot of crap going on with these people. And they call us crazy conspiracy theories when we start to point it out.
Well, if you see that, we have to send you a copy of my book, Who Killed Epstein, Prince Andrew or Bill Clinton. We got a super chat here, and it is, actually, we got a question. Why was the shooter in a Black Rock commercial?
That is a good question. It makes, again, You look at it and it's like not anything you can tie to it. And I do the same thing as him. I ask that question, what the hell is this guy doing? You know what I mean? There's things that you just look at and, I study Zen. And sometimes in the concept of Zen is the question is the issue, not what the answer is. It's the question. This was a perfect Zen example. The question is, all of us, everybody looked at that and everybody thought, what the hell is this kid doing in a BlackRock commercial? What's up with that? You know what I mean? So that question is kind of rhetorical. That question is kind of like a statement by just saying, what the hell is he doing in a BlackRock commercial? Something is amiss here. You know what I mean? He's in a BlackRock commercial. BlackRock has bought like half of Ukraine. So if Trump kind of ends the Ukraine stuff, they may stand to lose a lot of money. So perhaps BlackRock might have a stake in Trump meeting an untimely demise. You got to ask that. Good question, whoever it was that asked that. That's the question that needs to be asked. I don't think we'll ever get an answer, but it's an obvious question, isn't it?
So, super chat comment from Sparky. Butler police chief said that the policeman had no ladders climbed to the roof, so had to be boosted by a colleague and climbed by hand. He was hanging by both hands, so he couldn't draw his pistol.
That's not what I read. What I read was that he climbed up the ladder, the same ladder that this guy used. Again, questions we still have to ask. You know what I mean? And at that time, why didn't he scream into the microphone? Get the VIP off the stage. Get the VIP off the stage. Man with a gun. Why wasn't he screaming into his microphone? Why wasn't everybody screaming into their microphone? Shooter, shooter, gun, get him up. Why wasn't anybody doing that? Do you just like climb up the roof? Hey, there's a guy pointing a gun at you. Oh, crap. Hey, what'd you see up on the roof? Nah, nothing really. Just a guy. I think he had a gun pointing at me. But let's go get some coffee.
Garland, this hour has flown by. I salute you for your work exposing the deep state. Thank you, my friend and viewers. Like I said, all of Garland's links are in the description box below this video on YouTube. Is there anything you'd like to say in conclusion to the viewers?
No, I'd just like to thank everybody. I certainly thank you for giving me the opportunity to come on here. I really enjoyed it. And as you can tell, I have a lot of fun, on YouTube. I'm a straightforward guy. I have a lot of fun. And for those who don't know me, I'll just say this. This is the way I do. And I say, oh, I'm a lefty. But here's the way I look at politics and all this stuff. Like I'm just an alien that was dropped on Earth. I'm not left, I'm not right, I'm not white, I'm not black, I'm not male, I'm not female. Now, don't get me wrong, I can only really count the two genders. So let's not, I don't want to misgender anybody or to go into the multi-gender bull crap. I'm just saying, I try to evaluate these things without having any real bias. So I try not to let my ideology, my background, or anything, as you can probably tell, it is what it is, man. So I had a lot of fun. I try to have a lot of fun. It was a blast. Great show. Hope to come on again sometime.
Fantastic. My philosophy too is anti-dogmatism. So you are welcome back anytime, Garland. Thank you. I'm going to close the show and we will see you again, hopefully. Cheers.
All right. Same to you. Thanks.
Thank you. What a fantastic guest. So knowledgeable. And thank you, everybody in the chat, for putting the questions in there. Like I said, Garland's links are in the description box below this. And last night I did over an hour monologue drawing the parallels between the Hinckley assassination attempt on Reagan and looking at the assassination attempt on Trump. So check that one out. We've got John Wedger coming back tomorrow night with Ron to do crime theory. I'm not sure whether they're doing the Madeleine McCann case or not again. Then we got the Royal Mess on Friday. And then on Sunday, I have got a 2-hour interview with a guy who lost his arms and legs when he was age 19, DJ Hooky, Tom Nash, and he is so funny. He's got this amazing gallows sense of humor, but the story is truly heartbreaking and inspirational at the same time. So tons of content coming in the next week. Hope to see some of you in the chats there. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Hope to see some of you soon. Take care out there, wherever you are in the world. Much love.